The sky over Crescent Bay was the color of unpolished steel. Low clouds dragged across the coastline like tired thoughts, and the wind carried the scent of ocean salt and damp pine. It was the kind of day that asked for no celebration. Clara Jensen sat alone on a wooden bench facing the water, a thin cardigan wrapped tightly around her. The breeze tugged at the edges of her sleeves. A small, tart lemon, her mother's favorite, rested in her lap. No candles, no matches, no guests, just her and the ache of another birthday that felt like a hollow room. 28. Not long ago, birthdays meant rooftop dinners, laughter with friends, and early morning calls from her mom. Now they were silent. The wheelchair beneath her creaked as she shifted slightly. Her legs remained still as they had for almost 11 months now, since the crash that flipped her car and turned her spine into a cruel lesson in fragility. She had been driving home from a late client meeting, designing a luxury hotel suite that would never bear her signature. The irony: she had once built spaces to make people feel alive. Now she counted time in therapy sessions and quiet afternoons. Across the park, a little girl ran between patches of grass, her yellow coat billowing behind her. She couldn't have been more than 6. In her hand, she held a folded piece of paper. She paused when she noticed Clara slowing to a walk. Without hesitation, the girl approached. "Are you sad?" the girl asked, tilting her head. Clara blinked. The question was so direct it almost made her laugh. "A little," she said. The girl dug into her coat pocket and pulled out the piece of paper. "I write letters to people who look sad. You can have this one." Clara took it without a word. The girl smiled and ran back to the other side of the park, where a man sat reading a book on another bench. Her father, most likely. He looked up, caught Clara's eye, and nodded sheepishly. Clara unfolded the letter. Inside, written in large, uneven crayon letters, were the words, "If nobody smiled at you today, I already did." The paper trembled in her hands. Something in her chest twisted, painful, tender. She felt the sting in her eyes before she could stop it. And then, for the first time in months, she laughed. A short, broken sound, but real. She pressed the letter to her chest. The wind picked up again, but this time it didn't feel quite as cold. 2 days later, Clara wheeled herself into the narrow doorway of a used bookstore, tucked between a bakery and a florist. The bell above the door gave a soft chime. The smell hit her immediately: aged paper, old wood, and something faintly citrus, maybe, from the candles they sold at the counter. She had passed the store dozens of times since moving to Crescent Bay for rehab, but today, for reasons she didn't fully understand, she went in. A man behind the counter looked up from a book. His face was familiar. Gentle eyes, dark sweater, and a little girl sitting on a step stool nearby drawing cats on scrap paper. It was them. The man gave her a quiet smile of recognition. "You were at the park," he said, voice low and kind. Clara nodded. "Your daughter gave me a letter. She writes a lot of those," he said, his smile widening. "She calls it mail for the heart." Clara let out a soft chuckle. She has a good heart. The girl Luna looked up and beamed. "I told Daddy you looked like someone who used to love books," she said. Clara blinked. "That's oddly accurate." Luna shrugged like it was no big deal and returned to her cats. The man stepped around the counter, not too close, and gestured toward the shelves. "Let me know if you're looking for something. We just got a donation of art books. They're a little dusty, but full of charm." Clara moved slowly through the narrow aisles, her fingers brushing worn spines. Something about the space calmed her. The silence here wasn't empty. It felt intentional. She found a book titled Art made with one hand. She lifted it carefully, studying the shaky yet beautiful brushstrokes on the cover. The artist had lost use of her right arm in an accident. She painted with her left. Like me, Clara thought. She turned the book over in her lap, and the man walked over again, noticing what she had chosen. "Most people ignore that one," he said. "They want perfection, clean lines. But I like the honesty in it." Clara looked up. "Perfection's overrated," she replied. He met her gaze with a thoughtful nod. "I'm Ethan, by the way," he said, offering no handshake, just the words. "Clara." "Nice to officially meet you, Clara." They didn't talk much more. She bought the book, and Luna gave her a crumpled paper heart on the way out. Later that night, Clara sat by her window, the book open on her lap, Luna's heart beside her tea. The apartment was quiet, but for the first time in a long while the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like something was beginning. The forecast had promised sun, but Crescent Bay rarely listened. By late afternoon, gray clouds rolled in like slow thunder, and rain fell in uneven sheets across the town. Clara had just finished her afternoon physical therapy session and was trying to decide whether to brave the sidewalk home when she saw him, Ethan, standing under a black umbrella just outside the center's front doors. He saw her and lifted the umbrella in quiet greeting. "I figured you might not want to wrestle with wet wheels," he said. Clara blinked. "You waited, I was nearby," he said, as if it needed no more explanation. She hesitated, then nodded once. Ethan stepped beside her, angled the umbrella over both of them, and gently placed his hand on the back of her chair. He didn't ask where she lived. Somehow he already knew. Maybe Luna had mentioned it, or maybe he just followed the rhythm of her breath as he pushed. They moved slowly through the misty streets, past the shuttered ice cream stand, the mural-painted bakery, and the curved railing that lined the park path. The rain fell softly now, a quiet hush over the world. Clara didn't speak. She didn't feel the need to. Ethan didn't fill the space with chatter either. He just matched her silence with his presence. When they reached her building, he wheeled her under the small awning, shook out the umbrella, and folded it with practiced ease. "You okay from here?" he asked, voice just above the rain. She nodded. "Thank you." He didn't linger, just gave her a small nod and turned to walk away. But when she wheeled herself inside and reached her apartment, she found something resting on the little wooden table by her window. A small box wrapped in parchment paper and tied with twine. She opened it slowly. Inside was a tiny lemon tart, perfectly round, with a swirl of white frosting on top. A handwritten note sat beneath it. "Still rooting for you. E.M." Clara stared at the note for a long time. Something deep inside her shifted. Not all at once, not dramatically, but like a door creaking open just enough to let in light. She didn't cry, not this time. She smiled, then took a bite of the tart. A week passed, then two. The town began to tilt toward winter. Wind swept through the narrow streets of Crescent Bay, and the waves crashed louder than before. In the evenings, the bookstore glowed like a pocket of warmth at the end of the block. Clara found herself going there more often, not with any plan, not because she needed more books, but because it felt like a place that remembered how to be still. Sometimes she saw Ethan behind the counter sorting through stacks of paperbacks or helping Luna with her spelling lists. Sometimes he simply handed her tea when she entered, no words, just the warm weight of it in her palm. One afternoon, as golden light slanted through the bookstore windows, Ethan placed a second cup on the table beside Clara's sketchpad. "I figured tea might not be enough today," he said. Clara looked up, surprised. "Why today?" he shrugged. "Just a feeling." She smiled faintly, then gestured at her drawing an attempt at a coastal landscape done with her left hand. The lines were crooked, the colors unsure. "It's messy," she said. "It's honest," he replied. Clara hesitated, then set the pencil down. Her voice dropped. "My life used to make sense. Structure, plans, deadlines. And now, everything feels like guesswork." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know that feeling." "You do. I used to teach literature," he said. "High school. Then my wife got sick. Cancer. By the time it was caught, there was nothing to fight. I quit everything to take care of her. After she passed, I never went back." "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. He looked at her, and for a moment the bookstore around them disappeared. "You don't sound like you pity me," she said. "I don't," he replied. And somehow she believed him. A silence fell between them, deep still, not awkward. Clara had always hated silence after her injury. People filled it with overcompensation, with noise. But not Ethan. He let it settle. Let it mean something. Eventually she spoke again. "I was driving home from a client meeting. Long day. I just wanted to be home. The last thing I remember is headlights." He didn't ask more. Didn't flinch or tilt his head like others did. Instead, he simply said, "You're still here. That matters." Clara felt something warm unfurl in her chest. It wasn't comfort exactly. It was recognition. The buzz came at 9:12 a.m. on a Thursday. Clara was sitting by her window with a cup of coffee and her sketchbook half lost in the shape of a breaking wave she was trying to draw. Her phone lit up with a notification from a news app she didn't remember downloading. "Breaking former architecture prodigy now. A ghost in Crescent Bay. Once rising star disappears after tragic crash." Below the headline was a blurry photograph. Clara in her wheelchair, head turned slightly, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. The background revealed the park, the bench, the lemon tart. Her chest went tight. She stared at the screen, unmoving. The article went on to describe her as the daughter of real estate power couple Jonathan and Elaine Jensen, with added commentary about how her disappearance had left many wondering whether brilliance can survive brokenness. She dropped the phone. The shame hit her like a wave, hot, fast, humiliating. Not because of the truth, but because of the angle, the framing, the assumption that her injury had turned her from brilliant to broken. Her parents hadn't spoken to her in months. Not after she left the city, not after she withdrew from her firm. They had offered solutions, facilities, public statements. But never presence. Never the quiet kind. For 2 days, Clara didn't leave her apartment. She ignored messages from her therapist, skipped her art group, turned off the lights and the heater. She didn't cry. She just disappeared. On the third night, near midnight, someone knocked on her door. Not loud, not demanding, just a gentle, unsure sound. She didn't answer. Minutes passed. The knock came again. Then a rustle. And silence. Curious. Clara finally rolled toward the door and opened it just a crack. Outside, the hallway was dim. At her feet was a thermos, still warm. Beside it, a folded scarf, her favorite color, and a photo hand-drawn on rough paper. A picture of her and Luna sitting together on the bookstore floor, laughing. Below the sketch were the words, "You are not what they print. You are what you stay for." She felt the tear before it left her eye. Clara picked up the thermos, held it to her chest, and let the warmth sink in. Somewhere behind all the noise, someone had stayed. Clara returned to the bookstore 3 days later. The air still smelled of cinnamon and old pages, but the place felt different now, more like a home than a stop. Luna was crouched on the floor near a low shelf, sorting alphabet magnets into strange words. Ethan looked up from behind the counter and stilled when he saw Clara at the door. He didn't speak. Neither did she. She wheeled forward slowly, stopping in front of the counter. She set the thermos down. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "You don't have to," he began. "I do," she interrupted. "Not just for the tea. For not asking me to explain anything." He nodded. Sometimes silence says more than any speech. They stood in that space for a while, not filling it with unnecessary words, just letting it hold. Clara glanced toward Luna, then back at Ethan. "She's everything you know," she said. He smiled, that slow, tired but honest kind of smile. "She saved me in ways I didn't expect," he replied. Clara nodded. "Same." Later that evening, she returned home and opened her sketchbook. For the first time in weeks, her lines moved with purpose, not precision but honesty. She drew a candle. Tall, imperfect flickering. Next to it, a teacup. Cracked but whole. And behind them, a chair with a figure beside it, not standing, not kneeling, just staying. She signed the bottom corner with her initials. CJ. No full names. Not yet. But hers. That night, as the wind picked up outside and the town braced for the first real winter rain, Clara sat by her window with her blanket, her sketchbook, and a sense that the apology she once craved from her father, from her old life, from the universe, might never come. And that maybe that was okay. Some truths didn't need fixing. They just needed to be witnessed. Crescent Bay's winter was gentle. No snow, just soft rains and fog curling through alleyways like breath made visible. Clara found herself in the rhythm of something she hadn't felt in a long-time routine. Every Saturday morning, she wheeled herself to the bookstore for tea and conversation. Sometimes she helped Luna draw. Sometimes she sat with Ethan in silence, both sketching or reading, no pressure to perform or prove. One chilly afternoon, Luna tugged on Clara's sleeve. "I want to show you something," she said. She led Clara to the back of the bookstore, where a small round table had been set up. On it were sheets of wax paper, frosting tubes, cookie cutters, and dozens of pastel sugar hearts. "Daddy and I are making candy for people we love," Luna announced proudly. Clara smiled, touched. "They're beautiful." "Yours says something special," Luna whispered, holding out a slightly misshapen pink heart. Written on it in shaky letters, "Stay." Clara felt her throat tighten. "I like when people stay," Luna added simply. "Like Daddy did. Like you do now." She didn't know what to say. So she hugged the little girl gently, careful not to smudge the frosting. That evening, as they packed up the sugar hearts, Luna looked up at Clara with a serious expression. "Can I ask you something really big?" she asked. "Of course. If I asked Daddy to marry you, would you say yes?" Clara froze halfway through placing a heart into a box. She looked at Ethan across the room. He had overheard. His cheeks flushed and he gave a sheepish shrug, somewhere between amused and terrified. That's not how people usually do that," Clara said softly. Luna tilted her head. "But it's what I want." Ethan knelt beside Luna, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, that's a really big question. And grown-ups, they need time." "But she's already in my heart," Luna whispered. Clara swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly. "I don't know what I am yet," she said honestly, looking at Ethan. "But I know I'm not afraid with you." Ethan's gaze held hers for a moment, warm and steady. "That's enough," he said quietly. Luna clapped her hands and declared, "Then we'll just keep loving each other and figure it out later." And just like that, it was decided. Not a proposal, not a promise, just a shared understanding that love could arrive before the title, and family could be chosen long before the paperwork. The first time Clara heard her father's voice in months, it was not through a call or message. It was in person. She was at the community center setting up watercolor brushes for the children's Saturday class. Luna sat cross-legged nearby, organizing paints by color. The air smelled of tempera and lemon wipes. Outside, the sun fought its way through a pale gray sky. She didn't see him enter, only felt the shift, the sudden hush of nearby conversation, the stiffening in the shoulders of the woman beside her. Then Clara. Her hands paused mid-arrangement. Slowly she turned. There he was. Jonathan Jensen. Trim gray suit. Designer coat. Not a strand of hair out of place. He carried himself like a man who believed he still had control over things long since lost. "I flew in this morning," he said, scanning the room. His gaze lingered on Luna, then drifted back to Clara. "I wanted to see for myself." She stared at him. The last time they spoke, he had offered a rehabilitation clinic in Switzerland. Not his presence, not a hand, just logistics. "I didn't invite you," she said calmly. "I'm still your father." "But you're not the one who showed up when I couldn't get out of bed," she replied. "Not the one who brought me lemon tart when I couldn't speak." "You weren't there." His jaw clenched. "I read the articles," he said. "I thought this might be your way of punishing us." Clara's laugh was soft and dry. You think this is revenge? This is survival?" He glanced again at Luna, who was now watching him with quiet curiosity. "And that's the child they say you spend time with?" "She's not a headline," Clara said. "Her name is Luna." Her father looked troubled. "You don't belong in places like this." Clara wheeled forward just enough that they were face to face. "You're wrong," she said. "This is the first place I've belonged in a very long time." He stared at her. She expected an argument, a speech, but he only stood there unmoving. Then with a sigh he turned and left. No apology, no blessing. Just the familiar silence of absence. Clara watched the door close behind him and realized she wasn't angry. She wasn't even hurt. She was free. Later, as she helped Luna dip her brush into yellow paint, the little girl asked quietly, "Was that your old dad?" Clara thought for a second, then smiled. "No," she said. "My real dad is someone who taught me to make tea when I was sad, who sits beside me when I don't know what to say, who never asks me to pretend." Luna tilted her head. "That sounds like my dad." Clara reached over and squeezed her hand. "It does." The next morning, the air in Crescent Bay was heavy with salt and soft sun. Clara arrived early at the bookstore, her art bag balanced on her lap. Ethan was already inside, arranging a new stack of poetry books near the window. He looked up as she entered. "Hey," he said the word light and full. She held up a wrapped canvas. "I brought you something." He tilted his head. "A painting." Clara nodded. "But it's not perfect. It's not even finished." He took the canvas from her, carefully unwrapping it on the wide wooden table near the tea kettle. The image was simple, a park bench, two figures beneath an umbrella, one sitting, the other standing beside her. The sky above them was streaked with soft gray, but a sliver of gold peeked through the clouds. No signature, no frame. I didn't know where to stop, Clara said. It felt like it wasn't just mine to finish. Ethan didn't say anything right away. He looked at the painting for a long time. Then gently, he set it against the wall. It's already whole, he said quietly. She smiled. Even without a frame, he turned to her, his eyes softer than she had ever seen, especially without a frame. A few minutes later, Luna burst through the door wearing a paper crown and dragging a bag of glitter glue behind her. "Can we make welcome cards for the new painting kids today?" she asked out of breath. Clara nodded. "Yes, ma'am. But we're not using the glitter without supervision." Luna groaned dramatically and flopped onto the floor with a flourish. Ethan chuckled. Clara reached for a marker. They worked side by side that morning, crafting cards and sorting paints. When Luna wasn't looking, Ethan placed a warm mug beside Clara's hand. She looked at him, touched. "I don't know what this is," she said honestly. "You, me, all of this." He took a moment. "You don't have to name it yet," he said. "Some things are allowed to grow without labels." Her heart settled like sand in still water. "Okay," she said. The auditorium at Crescent Bay Elementary smelled like paper programs, overworked heaters, and too much hairspray. Folding chairs squeaked as parents filed in, each clutching a phone or flower bouquet. Clara sat in the front row, her hair pulled back in a braid, wearing a sea blue dress Luna had picked out for her. Next to her, Ethan adjusted his sleeves and tried not to look nervous. On Clara's other side, Luna's best friend Kayla leaned in to whisper. Luna said something big might happen today. Clara raised an eyebrow. The lights dimmed slightly. Children shuffled on stage dressed as bees, sunflowers, and rain clouds. Tiny voices stumbled through lines and songs, their innocence so sincere it softened the whole room. And then Luna, wearing a slightly crooked bee costume and a gold construction paper crown. She delivered her lines with the confidence of a Broadway star, her voice bright and unwavering. Clara and Ethan clapped hard after her solo. But when the finale came and the curtain began to close, Luna darted forward. "Wait!" she called out, stepping toward the microphone. The teachers behind the curtain froze. "I have one more line," she said seriously. "It's the most important." Clara leaned forward in her chair. Luna looked out at the audience and found them. Her voice steadied. "Can my family come up here, please?" Whispers rippled through the crowd. Clara's breath caught. Ethan blinked. Did she just... A teacher at the side gestured them forward gently. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she wheeled herself to the side of the stage. Ethan walked beside her, placing his hand on her shoulder as they reached the top step. Luna stepped forward again, holding a tiny velvet box with both hands. "Mommy Clara," she said clearly, "will you marry my daddy?" A stunned silence swept the room. Clara stared, speechless. Her hand rose to her mouth, her eyes wide. She looked at Ethan, who had gone pale and red at once. I had another plan," he whispered. "She got to it first." Laughter burst through the audience. Ethan turned to Luna and knelt. "May I?" he asked. She nodded seriously, handing him the box. He opened it to reveal a simple silver ring. No flair, no diamonds, just sincerity. He turned to Clara. "I don't have a speech, but I have stayed, and I will keep staying." Clara's eyes were already wet. She nodded, voice shaking. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder. "Yes." Luna squealed and threw her arms around both of them. The auditorium erupted in applause, soft, full of warmth. And under the two bright stage lights, Clara Jensen realized that she had never needed rescuing. Only someone who would stand with her through the shadows, the silence, and the sugar hearts. The days that followed moved with a new kind of softness. Not every hour was perfect. Clara still had pain, and sometimes the chair made her feel like an afterthought in crowded places. But now, when that shadow crept in, there was always something steady nearby, a hand, a voice, a laugh. One quiet Sunday morning, the three of them sat in the back corner of the bookstore, where the sunlight fell like honey through the high window. Clara painted while Luna hummed beside her, pressing colored hearts onto wax paper. Ethan watched from behind the register, occasionally bringing over mugs of warm cider or peeking at Clara's newest canvas. The painting was nearly finished. A park bench, a little girl in yellow. Two adults, one seated, one standing beside her under an umbrella. The sky above them was a watercolor mix of gray and soft blue, and just above the scene in gold script, Clara had written "Love Stays." She didn't need to sign it. That afternoon, as Luna napped with her head on Ethan's shoulder, Clara opened the drawer of her sketch bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper, faded, creased at the corners. The letter. "If nobody smiled at you today, I already did. Luna." She had carried it with her every day since that first birthday in Crescent Park. She looked at Ethan, at Luna, at the bookstore around her, and she smiled. A real one. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. That evening, back at her apartment, Clara took the letter and framed it with care. She hung it beside her newest canvas, not as a decoration, but as a declaration. That even a child's scribbled kindness could be the first step in rewriting a life. Later, Ethan stepped behind her and wrapped his arms gently around her shoulders. "Cold?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "Not anymore." They stood together in the quiet, listening to the wind rustle the curtains. And for the first time since the crash, since the noise, since the long silence that followed, Clara Jensen felt not just alive. She felt chosen, not despite her scars, but because of them.